Hey y'all, what's going on? It's Professor Barth here. So I was asked for next week to deliver a very, very brief 5 to 10 minute long defense of free speech at a luncheon. And the time limit is very strict. I mean, it's 5 to 10 minutes, which means for yours truly, I'm going to probably go to 10 minutes. I got to go to 10 minutes. But that's the stopping point, all right? So I've prepared this brief defense of free speech. Back in January, I posted on my channel roughly 1 hour long defense of free speech. I recommend you watch it. But this is 10 minutes. So I've printed it out. Okay, I want to be well prepared. Sometimes I wing it. That can work. But for events like this, I think it's probably better to come as prepared as possible. If you think something should be deleted, taken away, added, but remember, if you think ideas should be added, then something's going to have to be deleted, because I'm right there, 10 minutes, man. I mean, I've figured about 120 words per minute, so I'm right there, okay? So let's test drive it, see how it goes. This talk is next week in defense of free speech. Why do we champion free speech? Why do we hold the freedom of speech in such high esteem? Why is it that we esteem the free, unrestrained communication of ideas and opinions as among the most precious of all human liberties, even above many other important liberties? It is vital in this third decade of the 21st century that we learn how to defend freedom of speech. For most of our lifetimes, we took this freedom for granted. A robust defense of freedom of speech was not entirely necessary. That is no longer the case. We need to relearn the arguments for free speech in order to counter the assault that we are witnessing in our present day. Let's start with the basic definition. Freedom of speech protects the right of an individual to articulate opinions and ideas without fear of censorship or legal sanction. You may be ostracized for your opinion, nevertheless, you are free to express it. This freedom includes speech on any medium, whether delivered orally, in writing, in print, on the internet, through various art forms, etc. John Milton, the English poet and intellectual, argued famously that free speech is a multifaceted right that includes 1. The right to seek ideas and information. 2. The right to receive ideas and information. And 3. The right to impart ideas and information. Give me the liberty to know, to utter, and to argue freely, Milton said, above all liberties. Above all liberties. But why? Well, there's the moral argument. The argument that it's unethical on its face to suppress free thought and communication. This is the classical liberal argument, the argument of Locke, of Jefferson, etc. That regardless of the consequences, liberty is just and correct on its own merits. No one wants to be silenced in what they can say or think. That's not a free society. But importantly, there's a utilitarian argument as well for the freedom of speech. Truth has a strong and irresistible tendency to ultimately, not immediately, but to ultimately drive out falsehood. There has never been a period of human history anywhere on the globe where the prevailing opinions of the age were exactly correct. Exactly correct. It's never happened. Okay? In nearly all, maybe all, periods of human history, societies have suffered certain blind spots where particular views, later deemed correct were, at the time, extremely unpopular or politically incorrect. In every age, and this is so important, in every age there are popular views that future ages deem grossly incorrect and unpopular views that future ages deem prescient or correct. John Stuart Mill famously said that in every human society there exists a certain, quote, tyranny of the prevailing opinion and feeling. Tyranny of the prevailing opinion and feeling. History, he said, teems with instances of truth put down by persecution. The freedom of speech is, above all, the protection of minority rights. Freedom of speech does not simply protect popular speech. If so, that would render it meaningless, for popular speech does not require protection. Freedom of speech protects unpopular speech, and for good reason. Under free speech, even if the protected unpopular idea is indeed objectively wrong, objectively irrational, objectively incorrect, even if that protected unpopular opinion is wrong in a universal objective sense, nevertheless, it is actually beneficial, on the whole, to defeat that idea by exposure, by argument, and by persuasion, not by the barrel of a gun. By allowing a bad opinion to be communicated and then countered in the arena of public debate, you earn, to quote Mill, a clearer perception of the truth produced by its collision with error. A clearer perception of the truth produced by its collision with error. Let's say that the views you hold happen to be objectively correct. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. The views that you hold are objectively correct. If other people have complete liberty to oppose, to contradict, to disprove your opinion, or to attempt to disprove your opinion, that will actually bolster your confidence in the correctness of your own view. It will sharpen your opinion, your correct opinion. If people are not allowed to oppose your idea, they're thrown in jail for it, or they're censored through whatever, big tech. If people are not allowed to oppose your idea, there will always be that doubt. Like, wait a second, why are the authorities so determined to suppress this opposition view? So even for incorrect ideas, it's actually beneficial to allow them to be freely expressed and countered. Jefferson once said, quote, error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat it. Now, there are further utilitarian arguments in defense of freedom of speech. Mill argued that free speech promotes individuality, it promotes genius and critical thinking. Genius, he said, this is John Stuart Mill, genius can only breathe freely in an atmosphere of freedom. And man, what a great quote that is. Genius can only breathe freely in an atmosphere of freedom. Freedom promotes good science, innovative political ideas, good art. Look at the art of the Soviet Union, just total trash. Okay, because there was no freedom. Freedom promotes genius and individuality. Others have argued for free speech from a political science angle. In order for democracy to function effectively, for example, you must protect the free flow of information. The ruling class must not be allowed to manipulate the electorate by stifling criticism or by censoring information, that this negates a democratic foundation. Others have argued that freedom of speech promotes political stability by functioning as a safety valve for discontented people to let off steam. Censorship by closing that safety valve may actually encourage revolution and violence. And there are other arguments as well. Now, it's important to state there are commonly accepted limitations of speech. Libel, slander, obscenity, pornography, sedition, perjury, non-disclosure agreements, copyright violations. The $1 million question is, where do you draw the line? Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court back in 1919, argued that speech might be outlawed if it posed a, quote, clear and present danger, end quote. In this opinion, he upheld the convictions of people who spoke out against America joining the First World War. Which, I'm not going to say this in the talk, but I mean, the First World War was just utter disaster to the max. I mean, it should not have happened, obviously, but I digress. Clear and present danger was the test that Chief Justice Holmes established in 1919. But in 1969, in Brandenburg v. Ohio, the Supreme Court discarded with that broad, vague, and I would argue unconstitutional clear and present danger test, and clarified that the government can punish inflammatory speech only if it is, quote, directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action. Imminent lawless action was the new test established in Brandenburg in 1969. This is a fairly high bar that has made the freedom of political speech almost absolute in this country from a government angle. Now, the battle today over free speech is unique in that it doesn't really involve government per se. Today, in the 21st century, we are dealing first with self-censorship. And self-censorship's always been an issue, but it's off the charts right now. From a historic standpoint, there's more self-censorship than ever in this country. With self-censorship, and second, with corporate censorship. In a poll from last year, this is wild, 62% of Americans say they have political views which they're afraid to share. 62% of Americans have 62% have views that they're afraid to share. That's self-censorship. Self-censorship is on the rise. It's been on the rise in the United States. Artists, writers, scholars, comedians, journalists fear for their livelihoods if they commit the heresy of unorthodoxy. The heresy of unorthodoxy, of saying the wrong thing.